Welcome to Life Unscripted, Adulting Uncovered, the podcast for anyone out here doing their best to grow, heal, and not totally lose it in the process. I'm your host, Brennan, and if you ever felt like the only adult still figuring it out, don't worry, you're not alone. This is the place for you. Let's stop pretending and start talking.
Guys, welcome back to another episode of Life Unscripted, Adulting Uncovered. Today, I'm diving into a topic that may sound a little bit counterintuitive. It's the profound transformative power of being lost. See, we spend so much of our lives following a plan. We get a GPS for our career, we map out our relationships, we plan our marriages, we plan what we want our kids to do. Some of us even plan 3 or 4 Saturdays in advance. And if you live in the South, some of the people in the South will plan their next restaurant while they're currently eating at a restaurant. We map out everything as humans because that's what we do because it feels safe. But what if the greatest discoveries about ourselves happen when there's no map? The signal's dead and we have absolutely no idea what we're doing or where we're going. So today I'm making the case for embracing uncertainty and seeing loss, quote unquote, not as failure, but as a critical point on the journey to finding your truest self. I think that's what many of us want. We want to be the truest version of ourselves, but as we age and we come into adulthood, society, cities, relationships, jobs, careers, families, all these things can shape our personality and can sometimes detract from us being our truest version of ourselves. So let's dive into this. If we look at this as to why this happens, a lot of us follow a preset path. And if we look back into our early years when we're children, that's how we're raised, right? We have parents and family and teachers and coaches and instructors and all these people who are well-intentioned trying to shape and mold this little human so that they can grow up to be a good, productive, big human. Then as we grow up and be this productive human, this older human, this adult human, we start to think about, well, what will look good on a resume? Where do I want to go to school? How do I want to, who do I want to date? What do I want my marriage to look like? Do I want to be married? What do I want from a partnership? All these things start to come into our life and all these decisions that we make. And sometimes we choose the paths that are safe, but it doesn't mean that that path is for you. I felt like whenever I am lost, when I come out of it, I generally realize it's the universe's way of gently nudging me off a path that was not meant for me. And I have seen this rinse and repeat throughout my life so many times. And in the time when it happens to you, you think, well, why is this happening? This can't be good. It's the coming out of that really crystallizes what is for you and what's not for you. So think about this. When you're truly lost, whether it's in a career or a new city or after a major life change or a relationship, a marriage, the labels and roles that defined you start to peel away. When you're lost out of those situations, this identity that you had in those situations starts to peel away. And you're no longer the vice president or the manager or the student or the husband or the partner. And without that identity, that void forces you to ask a very critical and fundamental question. And it is, who am I when I'm nobody? Who am I when I'm nobody? And that answer is pure gold. It is gold bullions. And that's where we start to kind of take shape, this caterpillar coming out of the cocoon into the butterfly. This is the critical point. That necessity, right? Because when we're lost, we have to decide who we are. And that necessity breeds creativity. So when you're lost, your old solutions don't work anymore. In the examples I gave earlier, if it's out of a relationship or a marriage, you're no longer the spouse. You're no longer the partner. If it's out of that career, you're no longer the vice president. You're no longer the manager. If you're in a new city and you're just out of college, you're no longer the student anymore. And this forces you to be resourceful. It forces you to be innovative, and it forces you to be adaptive. And it's when we enter this mind state of necessity that we discover all these hidden skills, that we are more resilient than we realize, and we had all these passions that we didn't know, and there is some sort of crystallization of a human that happens because this deeper sense of self occurs when we come out of that situation, because now we look back and we say, oh, that happened and I did this, this, and this to get past it. There's a realization of courage. There's a big moment of confidence, and there's a deeper sense of self that occurs. And when we lock into that, we start to really grow, and that's where that transformative transition happens. So going from that place of lost and uncertainty to now feeling emboldened to be somebody who really knows who they are. I want to share a little story about a time when I got lost, and I was lost in a relationship. And I think that many of us have this experience. I think everybody should at least have one or two of these stories. It's very common for us to get into relationships and get lost in them because you have interest in someone, you develop feelings, and you want to do things with them, and then you start doing things that they do. I'm sure you've heard stories. Maybe you heard, somebody that met someone and they never went camping before, and then they started dating this person, and they're like, over the past 2 years that we dated, we went camping all the time, and when we broke up, I realized I fucking hate camping. So for me, I was dating a girl, and she liked to party more than I did, and she liked to eat edibles, and it really was never been my thing, and I don't really drink that much. It's very rare that I drink, but in this relationship, I started to drink more. Fast forward, the relationship ended. I realized that I had gotten so lost in that relationship, and I lost a piece of myself in that relationship. And so coming out of it, I realized that things needed to change, right? And I had to take a good hard look at myself as to why I was choosing to do those things and how I got swept up into that. And then I had to start this whole path of working on myself to get through that. And that's a whole nother episode and a whole nother thing. But the point here is that coming out of that relationship, having that awareness of being lost, it crystallized that I needed to do something. And then I took action. I figured out why I was doing the things I was doing. I took a look at why I was choosing the people to date that I was choosing, why I didn't, draw boundaries early on that say, hey, this is not something that works for me, why I had chosen to, invest feelings in that person when I knew that it was more than likely not going to be something that worked long-term for me. Once I healed from that, out of that really formed this person who had so much more clarity and so much more confidence and understanding about what they need and want and what they had to offer. I needed to get broken down through that relationship. I needed to go through that pain to really understand what I wanted. And in those moments of being lost and not knowing what to do, I had to figure out something else other than what I had been doing in order for me to have change. In order for me to affect change in my life and do something different, I needed to make different choices. I couldn't keep choosing the same people and going down the same patterns anymore. And those sparks of creativity, those glimpses of inspiration, is what led me to the people that I needed to find to help me to get through that so that I could come out on the other end a much more succinct, crystallized, stronger, more clear, confident version of myself, and I would not repeat those same patterns. That brings us to a very practical part in this episode, and that is it's really easy to romanticize getting lost, but in the moment, it can be so scary. So if you're listening to this and you feel just utterly lost right now or directionless, I want to give you just a few simple and actionable tips that will help you recenter and recover and move forward. So the first one is, if you feel lost, practice creative idleness. Instead of panicking and scrambling for the next job or the relationship, and like I was giving you that example, I could have just hopped to another relationship, but I would have just carried all my problems with me because I follow myself wherever I go. I don't know if you guys know that, but you follow yourself wherever you go. I had to just pause in that moment, and I had to commit to just creating quiet space for me to do absolutely nothing to figure out what was going to happen next. And so that is one tip that I can give you, is trying to practice creative idleness. Commit to an hour a day of doing nothing. Absolutely nothing. No phone, no TV, just sit with yourself. Because your best ideas and your truest feelings will often come to you when we're quiet. Sometimes when I am stuck with multiple decisions and I don't know what to do, I pause. I pause and I just sit, and I eventually get the answers that I need. And you can too. Practice creative idleness. The next one is to try mini experiments over grand plans. You don't need to find your life's purpose tomorrow, but you could try small, low effort, low stakes, little experiments to see where you need to go. This will help give you directions if you're listening. So you could do something like volunteering for a cause that you care about, or read a book on a subject that you know nothing about, or try to take a class that you're scared to take, or join a group that makes you get outside of your comfort zone. What you're doing is you're not looking for some sort of major smoke signal. You're just looking for a small spark. So if you just try some mini experiments to figure out certain things, these are great ways for you to kind of get some direction on where you need to go next. And another thing is I want everyone to do is to redefine failure. So treat missteps or false starts as data collection, not a character flaw. Every wrong turn or mistake, it tells you something where you don't want to go. And that always brings you one step closer to where you do need to go. You know, in business, there's this idea that if you fail fast and make it not mean shit is a really good way to grow, because when you're an entrepreneur, you're constantly having to pivot, right? You have this idea, you go out there, you try to execute on the idea, it doesn't go the way that you planned, you can't get funding, you need to explain why this is not just why everybody's telling you it's this, and you're saying it's so much more than that, it's this, and you have to pivot constantly, you shook and jive to where you find success. And you hear these stories over and over and over from some of the greatest, business gurus of our time. But the point is, they don't see it as failure. They see it as data collection of what not to do. And, you've heard the story for Elon Musk, right, where he talks about how everybody told him Tesla was never going to work. No one's going to buy electric cars. And you can see where that's at. And even with SpaceX, he said that they kept telling him, you're never going to be able to do that. It's not going to be possible. And his first 3 rockets exploded. And look where SpaceX is now, right? They're literally shooting rockets into the sky and then landing them safely at a different location. Failure is only what you believe it to be. Another thing is to identify your anchors. While your path is constantly changing and shifting, cling to a few things that are consistent. Your routine, a weekly call with a friend, your favorite cafe. Keeping these small constants provides the stability that you need to weather some of these big changes. So have routine, some connections that you have, a favorite place you like to go to, and keep those consistent, right? And so as things are changing in your life, you have some level of normacy. And the last tip I'll give you is to talk to someone who is a quote-unquote wanderer. So seek out someone who has successfully pivoted their life or their career, and someone who has also been lost. See, it's very powerful when we share stories with one another, because it provides us proof that we can, that we will, and always we do is find our way again. Having that person to talk to that's gone through what you've been through is a really, really helpful process to have. The next time you're feeling just completely lost, your stomach's dropping, you feel utterly confused, I want you to take a deep breath and remind yourself you are not off track. You're in the process of discovery. You're in the process of finding yourself again and realizing that it's time for you to be created anew. And that process is beautiful and it's necessary. Guys, so all in there today, remember, my reason for posting content has always been mission-driven. It's to help people heal, grow, and live a life with purpose. If something hits, share it with someone else. If everybody who listens to this podcast just shares it with one person, we can double the spread of this mission. And to help people, remember that getting lost is a great way to find yourself. And remember, life is always better when we stop pretending and start talking. Catch you next time.